Hello, and welcome to People Unfiltered, powered by Ideas Global. I'm your host, Evelyn Espinal. The People Unfiltered podcast is creating the future of inclusion, diversity, equity, activism, and social impact. We deconstruct the myths and failures of DEI, sin pelos en la lengua, to evolve it or a rebirth. We go beyond surface conversations and dive into the hard truths and unspoken realities for deeper discussions with insights and advice. Hello. Welcome to People Unfiltered. I'm your host, Evelyn Espinal. Today, we have with us Melanie Luna, an artist and the associate director of the Duckworth Gallery in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Today, we're going to be delving into the art world. How is diversity showing up? What are the issues around inclusion? What are the areas of social impact that we need to consider? We're lucky to have Melanie with us who can talk about her own experience, her perspective on the future, and also give us some advice on what we think should be changing. Melanie, thank you for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here.
You're the first guest that we are going to have from the art world. So I'm very excited to learn more about your experience and your perspective. I think we always start with the same question with all of our guests. We ask them to tell us a little bit about their journey to get into the field that they are in. So if you wouldn't mind telling a little bit to our audience, explaining to them a little bit about you and your background and how you got into the art world.
Thank you. Well, I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. So from my earliest memory, I've always saw my sister drawing, my older sister. So as a younger sister, I think we sort of mirror that. So that's here on the timeline. Fast forward, I moved to the Bronx, immigrated with my family. And from my memory, I wasn't working then. It was only senior year of high school that I started asking myself what I really wanted to do with my life. Was it get into books and remember things, or was it to be a visionary and start something from scratch? Do excuse my dog. He is here.
Oh, it's adorable.
Thank
He's
you so
welcome.
much. So yes, senior year is when I think I started taking it serious. And then I applied to art school, Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And that's when I started asking myself, okay, other people are pursuing this. This person didn't go to school and achieve this height. I am starting with a good head start, if you can say. At 17 years old, I think that's quite young for someone to decide, I want to be a famous artist, quote. And then after that, after I graduated, I mean, I went to school. I had to take it serious. And for a daughter of immigrants, you can't just change your mind. You know what I mean? You really have to make that promise to your parents all the way. So then I dabbled in curation. I worked at one other gallery before my current one today, and I was exhibiting across the world. And I think that that's what gave me more leña, more wood into my fire to keep it going. So yeah, I'm the middle child of three girls. My parents didn't go to college. I am pursuing a rich kid's career, and I'm going for it.
And
So
now you're the associate director at the Duckworth Gallery.
that's right. That's more on the corporate side of the art world. You know, I started with talking about being an artist first, because that's where I guess, my flame is at. But I am enjoying the administrative side. Meeting collectors and other artists have been quite an interesting part. Yeah. And studio visit. Lots
So
more.
how does it feel to be on the corporate side as a Latina? What are you experiencing in terms of the amount of diversity that you're confronting?
You know, from before I got this position, my image of the gallerina, they call it, is mostly women that deal with, like, before the ones that are making the bigger bucks, that work in auction houses or the mega blue chip galleries. And they're mostly from wealthy families, and they are usually friends or family members of whoever's running the space, or collectors, daughters or sons of collectors. And most times I have never really seen a girl like me when I walk into a space like that. So I would say that there's not a lot. I don't see a lot of people like myself in that side of the world. I think we're mostly behind the curtains or art handlers. Maybe sometimes they'll work in the front of the gallery, but to have relations with collectors and other artists and other galleries, that's usually reserved for the higher ups.
And so, how does that make you feel as a Latina to be in an environment where you don't see people like you? And I'm sure that you don't see that depicted in the art as well as in the artists that you're working with.
It makes me feel like I possibly, maybe I probably won't be taken seriously. Maybe it's a costume I'm playing, a role I need to fill to check those boxes. So it doesn't leave room for risks and more creative endeavors of like, I have an idea. Let's roll with this instead of having to follow the status quo. I think when you look different and feel out of place, you tend to lower, how can I put this? You don't shoot further. You don't want to step on anybody or on any, foot. You're kind of walking on eggshells, because if you make a mistake, that could be it for you. They're already taking a chance on you. So if you start messing up, a bit harder. So that's how I feel. I feel like it's a very careful line I need to work. I can take some risks, but also don't go too far off the road so I don't, lose the opportunity I have currently. Now, and it's funny because we're jumping from me being in the art world and the managing side, and then now I'm going to answer as an artist. That's a much deeper answer. I very much don't feel like I truly am seen unless I'm objectified or fetishized, really. I think being a woman and on top a woman of color, now I check two boxes that are quite, oh, wow, you must have done a lot to get to where you're at. It's a very spiky chart. There's a lot of more ups and downs than a guaranteed incline. That other artists that are, usually either their parents were artists or their parents were doctors and they themselves could have a leisure career, that line is usually pretty steady. It's a slow incline. Everyone eventually experiences their ups and downs, but as a woman of color, it's wild.
How do you think that this has impacted your art, the way that you are expressing yourself and the materials that you depict, the materials that you use and the images that you depict in your art?
Because now I have nothing to lose, because I'm already experiencing such a wild roller coaster for being who I am. Apologies for my dog once again. And again, answering as an artist, I tend to take a lot more risks because it's already a long, slow, burning career. Might as well have a period in between that you were just painting something uncomfortable. Right now, the art is just wallpaper, and that's just on the decorative side. There's nothing that's challenging what's happening today and overseas or extraterrestrial. I mean, we can go anywhere in our reality, but it's fairly easy on the eye currently. So yeah, I tend to take more risks with my work right now.
And how do you feel that that's received as a Latina when you're taking risks in your work? What's the reception to that?
Honestly, and I ask myself this quite a lot, why is it that, and I talk to my friends and they know, Melanie, you're so talented, you're great, but also I'm not where I should be right now. I see this and then I tell myself, that's because God has plans for me. And it's gonna take some time to get there. And it's actually better that it's happening how it's happening today. Because I wonder if I spiked, if one of my, my charts, if I were to project my future, if I spiked a little too high, I wonder if I would just have a decline just as bad or double as bad, and having to get up from that point to then start it again, because nothing lasts forever, And again, I predict that artists just have these phases and it's challenging. So yeah, I think I don't mind it. I think I kind of sometimes like the struggle is making me work even harder, and making me want to do even more crazier things with my work. Because again, I have nothing to lose, nothing. So that would be the answer. It's fiery. It's kind of nutty and crazy. I like it. I don't mind it. But again, it is a struggle financially. I mean, there's moments I'm like, how am I going to maintain this? You know? And that chart, it's even crazier because, I'm not the only one that feels this way. I think a lot of artists are struggling right now. And it's going to become more obvious as time goes on with this economy and with the house.
Absolutely. I'm wondering about the kind of advice that you've received, right? You've been mentored by people, you've had coaches and people in your life that have given you advice. You'd mentioned to me earlier that there's a professor that you worked with at Pratt who gave you some really great insights. I wonder if you can share a little bit of that.
Right. So I graduated 2019. So there was a period, maybe starting 2013 and onwards, that artists of colors were having their moment, and it was pretty big and pretty obvious. And so a lot of white artists felt left out. And it's a funny feeling because that was the first time we had some attention. So I had a professor of mine once tell me, how about you take advantage of this momentum, of this new trend, this wave, and paint yourself? You're a pretty girl, you're of color, they'll want to put you on their walls. And I was very much offended by that. I thought I was just, an object, and that was really upsetting because back then I was painting abstract. So you're offending me as like a person, and then now you're basically telling me change your style because abstract is reserved for the other class. You are just you. They'll see you for who you are, deeper than that. So it was offending on both ways. This, wow, I can't believe. And back then I was very against figurative work, because I had that feeling of like, why are we allowing ourselves to be hung like trophies in people's houses? Though you can depict someone else that's not yourself, if it's not a self-portrait, it's still your brother or your sister. You know what I mean? Like I could paint someone else that has brunette, brown, and could be someone else, but it's kind of a reflection of me at the end of the day.
So I'm wondering about the comment you made about how Latino artists or people of color can be fetishized in the work. Can you talk to me a bit about that? Give me some examples.
Well, my brain goes to a few scenarios, and I'm sure you'll notice how quickly I'll come up with a few answers, and some are uncomfortable. But it feels like a hunting game, and when you hunt a deer, you keep their head on their wall. It really feels like that sometimes. Like if I was a collector and I was hosting a party and I invited all of my friends, I can show off, wow, look at all these ethnicities. I don't have maybe some of my kind on the wall, but also look at the others. And that's kind of like the collection, like someone that collects butterflies. It's almost like that. And again, we're talking about people. But at the end of the day, how are these artists taken care of, or what have they had gone through to get to where they're at? There's still a story, a darker story sometimes with that. So it feels uncomfortable to like voluntarily check that box as a woman as an artist of color, because now I'm like giving in to, yes, I am that person, I shall then wear that hat. and disregard all these other explorations in art that are available to everybody. Right now, I'm exploring the cosmos. I feel like scientists, you know what I mean? And I love that. Why not? Or a zoologist with animals, which is my favorite style, you know?
So I'm wondering about how galleries affect the trajectory of the artists and also their financial capability. What's been your experience in being able to see people of color in galleries and whether that actually leads to higher success?
I'll stick to the hunting reference for a little bit longer. It feels like my captured, who I've decided to stay with because they pay my bills or they help me pay my bills, will decide which zoos I go to and showcase, or which circus I go to and showcase. So you're highly dependent on your gallerist or your dealers, private or public. Usually they can work in many other fields, as art advisors or even directors at galleries. You're highly dependent on them. And nowadays, I feel, and again, I'm only 28 years old, so I don't know if this has always been the case, but we've lost quite a lot of power. They very much determine everything about your career. And then they have these long-term plans for you. And so you sit duck. Is that a thing they say in America? You sit and you wait for it to culminate. You know, like, oh, you're going to make it in 10 years, but during this time, don't show with other galleries or don't make sales behind my back. You know, let's stick to the group and, you know, do it together. But then, you know, eventually they take that glove off and discard you. And so then you're left with having to start over. So it's a lot of making friends, but also being really cliquey. Like you can't be friends with everybody because then you're cheating on your gallerist or your dealer. So yeah, they hold a lot of power, quite a lot. And our dream has always been, because back in the day, they were better, but we had more power over them, you know? They needed us more than we needed them. Back in the day, you know, if you had a good dealer, they took care of you. They made sure that whoever was collecting your art were not just collectors for your patrons. They took care of you as well. They pay your bills. They helped you get materials. Oh, you need this specific pigment from Egypt? I know someone that, you know, and they find anything you need. Nowadays, they expect you to you know, go above and beyond and to be thankful for it and be happy with your 50%. So it's very corporate. Yeah.
So then tell me a little bit about the corporate power that you have at the Duckworth Gallery. Are you able to show more diverse artists? And do you have the flexibility and the accountability to be able to decide who you're going to feature?
So as associate director, I'm almost there to be the one that decides who shows and who doesn't. But I would say that I have some chances in a calendar year to show what I would like to show. It's still a work in progress. There's always different genres we want to investigate at Duckworth Gallery. So we're still very much in the early stages of finding out our identity at the gallery. I myself have a lot of ideas and I have a clear view of what I would like to see, you know, and it's almost a reflection of what I've done and what I've helped curate in the past before. And it's almost an atlas of the world. It's very diverse and very open, whether you went to art school or not. I actually met an artist yesterday and she was absolutely incredible in her 80s. And I was like, why not? Why haven't we seen an elder artist who has never had the spotlight suddenly come up? Boom. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm 28. Of course, I want my moment now, but I have a lot left in my years. I have a lot left to do and go. And I'm patient. I'm actually the most patient artist you'll probably meet. I'm okay with the struggle. But then I met her and I was like, wow, I really think that, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, and apologies for kind of jumping out of frame here.
No, that I completely understand. There's a lot that's going on. I'm also wondering, when you think about establishing diversity in the museums, so beyond the gallery work, but actually going to that established organizations like museums, what do you think the opportunities are for women, queer artists, people of color to actually start to be seen as beyond the classics, right? For them to be able to put a foothold in places like that.
Right. So when it comes to museums and big institutions like that, it really helps to know where the pieces are and who has access to these pieces. And this goes back to why these well-connected children or adults who come from prominent families of collectors or other gallerists and dealers, they know where these pieces are at. So if someone wanted to organize a show strictly about the French movements that was mixed with immigrants, that I don't think I've ever seen that, to be honest. Again, I'm just making things up. Someone needs to know where the first one that ever made this style, the second, and where everything is, especially if they've been collected before. Most of the time, it's not just random art from random people. I wish it was more like that, but it's not. So yeah, they have to be very well connected. So by default, we don't quite qualify for that because for the majority of our life, we are struggling. We're starting from absolute zero. And that takes a very long time. So when we do have our chance, it's way later in life. And by that time, you've probably been corrupted to the point, not corrupted in a bad way, but maybe you're not as risky as before. Your ideas still need to be condensed to fit the status quo because then you're happy you get the opportunity, so you don't want to lose it. So why step on other feet? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like the cycle. So it's a struggle, and by default, it's a much slower race.
You did mention Nepo babies earlier. So, what's been your experience? Help us understand how some people have a foothold in the art world that comes from their parents, something that they perhaps didn't earn, versus people like yourself that are struggling to make your name for yourself because you don't have that advantage.
Right. So, these individuals, these people, have always been surrounded by taste. However, their parents show them or their grandparents. That's why art is so inaccessible. Like my uncles don't understand what's going on. They are really confused as to what I'm trying to achieve here. Whereas when they were very young, they were already surrounded by these mega $1 million pieces or soon to be the mega millions, because that's the thing. They decide what's good and what's bad. So because their family has 50% of an artist collection, a dead artist collection, right? That means they'll never make more. They need to make sure that those pieces and the name of the artist gets to a level so they can eventually maybe cash out. It'll take a long time. It'll be their grandkids cashing out slowly but surely. But they decide the taste and the market. So yeah, it's a whole different world that I'm not part of. My family is not part of. It's generations actually. It's not new money. It's old money on top of that. So that's another hill to climb that I think might require 2 lifetimes for me to even get close to a 5-year-old experience in their surroundings. And I really just mean the collection that was built before they were born and even before that. So that's how tightly knit the art world is.
Mm. So talk to me a little bit about the gallery that you're associate director at, Duckworth. Can you give me a bit about the background and some of the mission and purpose of what you're trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. So I'm the associate director, which is absolutely so much fun because I met a lot of artists and I'm loving the studio visits that I get to do. I always try to take out a little bit of time in my day to at least do a phone call or video, or if I have the time, I go there in person, which is usually the best way to look at art. The gallery is named after Adrian Duckworth. So he's a British artist who actually, survived Dunkirk in World War II with his brothers. Pretty gnarly story. And his son, Darren Duckworth, is the director of the gallery. So he opened the gallery last year, February. So we're about a year in. Wow, that was fast. And he's opened it up as I guess, a dream to his father, Adrian never really got the recognition that he wanted. And after the war, he kept painting. And I think something happened where he couldn't stop painting. So there's quite a large collection at the gallery, about like 2,000 pieces, ranging from the decades. And every decade it's a little different, which is something I actually really like to see because most times you only see the best decade of the artist, and then you just like disregard the ones before, or like the hiccups ones that weren't as good. But anyways, so the mission is really to showcase as many artists as we believe in, mostly group shows. We are going to focus on more solo shows, and in between we'll have some of Adrian's works from the decades. I want to focus on connecting Adrian and other artists that are living today and see if he fits this new narrative, because his work, when you see it in person, feels quite modern, which I'm surprised about, mostly the 70s and 80s. Those two bodies of works, I think, are the most contemporary of them all. Yeah, so it's still a work in progress, to be honest with you.
Are there any planned exhibitions that are going to put a spotlight on other diverse artists or anything that's coming up that you want to share with us?
At the moment, we're still working on our programming for 2026, but I've got some folders reserved and aside for things I'd like to do, which will be later this year, Q3, Q4 of the year. Mostly abstract art and artists of color, and women artists as well, like only women artists for at least two of the shows.
Wonderful. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about your process as an artist. How are you getting your creativity? What are the different things that you've been working on now? Just talk to us a little bit about what we can see from your work.
Right. So I spoke a little bit about an artist's timeline and trajectory, and there's stages. There's the hiccup stages where your art is experimental and maybe your collectors don't like it and they're like, please go back to your other stuff. Right now, I think I'm in one of those, but I'm actually having so much more fun than my last style or my last investigation of the animal world and the natural world. I mostly focused on the muscular system, the flesh underneath, the skin, or what we see and what we categorize as that's a zebra. You know what I mean? Black and white. I go deeper, and that was my investigation of playing God. And I was working on a Noah's Ark series, so I was making two of each animals. Now I'm investigating the cosmos, so it's strictly stars and black and white. And I believe this is where I've went macro with my work. I've always liked science, so I see things from the smallest to then the largest, and I think I'm scaling out right now. And I'm exploring a lot more because I have a feeling I'll want 360 and come back to it eventually, but with the natural world. You know what I mean? Maybe that didn't make sense. It's still a work in progress in my head. So yeah, an investigation of the cosmos, very abstract, very new, and most people don't, recognize it as my previous work, and I like that.
Yeah, giving you a chance to branch out and to show some diversity that you have.
Exactly. I feel like we shouldn't, stick to the one thing they recognize us for. Why not keep playing, I'm 28. I still have quite a lot of time left to to investigate and play around and get dirty.
Well, I'm curious about the investment side of the art world. A lot of times this becomes a financial decision for people. It's not just, do you like the art, but is this going to be art that will retain its value or increase its value over time? Can you share some light on that for us? Help us understand how these decisions get made?
Of course. Well, money rules the world. So it's in your best interest that your collection is withstanding the times, and that, yes, down the line, it will have ROI, a return of investment that was worth the hold, the patience of you not getting rid of these pieces too soon. Or that you beg your kids and your grandkids not to sell it too soon, because it might be 4 generations down that it's worth it. But that was back in the day. It's still sort of going on today. Right now, the arts are like penny stocks. They feel very gimmicky and are quickly being made and quickly being sold, that it doesn't leave room for collectors to believe in, I actually want it to be a slow burn. You know, you don't want a company that suddenly starts faking numbers. You know, it's going to eventually crash. And I think artists, they themselves are advocating to be like, believe in me, come on, be an investor into my company. I'm going to do this. I'm 30 under 30. I promise I won't go to jail. I'm not scamming. Not all the time, but I think artists have lost their purity. You're supposed to just be making art. When you start thinking about it as a company, as that you have to have investors, they don't see it as a collector anymore. They're convincing them to see them as money signs more than to see them as an artist, as like real change. Like, oh, I'm owning something very special here that has no value, you know, but has value that's just not monetary. So now artists are role playing as CEOs. And I think that that's what's adding fire to this crazy house that's burning. And yeah, I think it's also our fault. But, you know, the way that we've been dealing, how we've been dealt the cards, we do need bread and butter. So we got to figure this out. I think giving some power away, like I did mention before, to dealers, it's a good way, but it can't be too much power, or else you'll lose your way and then they'll take advantage of you. So there's got to be a push and pull with this. You don't want to make it too much about the business, or else you lose the magic. And yeah, you want your collectors to believe in you down the road, because they'll continue hopefully collecting from you. But I don't know. I think people are struggling, and they have to wear these hats right now. But it would be different if collectors were doing their job, which is also being patrons. You don't just buy one painting from your favorite artist once a year. You're buying a part of their soul. Like you know, do you look at the painting every day before bed and think about, are they eating today? Are they okay? You know, again, now there's different types of artists. There's the ones that are obviously perfectly fine and don't need none of that. But that's just the 2%. It's a lot more artists that experience the rare sale and they feel so good about it, but then next month it's back to zero. So I think that survival mode, it's what makes you start acting stupid and maybe, you know, sacrificing your vision to fill a role just so you can survive. Yeah. It's failed ecosystem.
I'm wondering, as my final question to you, about the future. So what are some of your hopes for how the art world can continue to evolve in the future in ways that can better support social change and that can also be more inclusive of diverse perspectives?
I'm problematic. So the first thing that came to my mind is, oof, this is bad. And I really don't mean this. And I apologize if I've offended anybody. But I really think that some art needs to disappear,
Mm,
meaning lose its value, like a crash of some sort, like when the market crashed in '09. I think there needs to be that. Again, the only ones losing here mostly are the collectors, right? The artists, of course, are, it's trickle down economics. They will be affected by this, but there needs to be a correction in the art world. Something big needs to happen where we need to start asking ourselves, why are we overfeeding ourselves with all this content? Remember when NFTs were a thing? What the heck was that about? You know, $60 million
yeah.
Beeple GP JPEG.
Yes.
That was pretty gnarly. So yeah, I think there needs to be a sort of a correction for that would be the first thing that needs to happen. Then artists really need to not go back to school. I really highly recommend that there needs to be a school founded by an artist that has a mission statement that, you know, hopefully people believe in, where artists take back more of the control. Maybe they're the ones choosing this artist did this first, or there's a conversation here that's sort of adding to this other pot, because we are the ones that understand what's going on, you know, because we understand why they chose that color. Maybe not all the time. You know, collectors are seeing money signs, wallpaper. It's not how we see things. I think artists, when they go and look at shows, are actually genuinely looking at the art and thinking about it and taking from it, and hopefully going back to the studio and making art themselves. We are the ones that are giving energy back, and we receive it. It's like a lot of back and forth with art and artists. Collectors are not quite in that, but I'm really emphasizing on the collector part because it's an economy and they pretty much make a majority of it. We make more of it, but they make the majority because they are the ones that bring in the bacon. And without the bacon, we can't, you know, do anything. So, correction, and I think artists need to take a lot more control, like genuinely more control, and maybe expose the, you know, the fake ones that are out there. They're all sort of sprinkled in, and there's a lot of, yeah. Sorry, my take is negative.
Well, I didn't hear that as negative at all. I mean, I hear the change that's needed for the industry. And if we want to be able to see the diversification of the art, of the artist, of the perspective, I think what you're describing makes sense. Having a correction of sorts feels like a very powerful thought.
Yeah. And I promise you, I'm not the only one that feels this. And you're right, it's not negative, it's frustration. It really has come
Mm.
to the point right now where it's so obvious in our face, like what is going on. I haven't been to an opening where I really felt like we were there for the art. No. Right now we go to openings to talk to someone, but my eyes are over here to check who else is here. Who else is here? It's not what's on the wall or what's hanging from the ceiling or who's reciting. It's performative. It really is just, oh, oh, that person's important. I better go talk to them and get something from it. It's
Mm.
too much, yeah, networking. It just feels like it really feels like penny stocks, and we're all fighting to be the next one that blows up. And we're gonna make sure our collectors know it so they keep supporting us. I don't know. I feel like people just really need to ask themselves, will you still be an artist if no one will ever see your work? Will you still do it if you were behind closed doors and guaranteed no one will ever see it? You know what I mean? Will you still
Yeah.
sing if no one can hear you? Will you still write if no one can ever read your work? Like you have to ask yourself that. Because if you're posting every single day, and again, of course, you have to do marketing, you have to put yourself out there. If you're complaining about I haven't made it, da da da. Hopefully, I'm not complaining. Like I said, I'm loving this the slow burning struggle incline. I love it because I know when I look back into it, I'll be like, that was worth it. So much fun. And I didn't have to sacrifice my vision at all. I was misunderstood, but eventually finally understood. And that feels so much better than understood and then canceled or something. Oh my God. So yeah.
Well, I can't wait to visit the Duckworth Gallery again in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and see what you're exhibiting. It's been such a pleasure to have you with us, and I appreciate your candid, no holds bar view of what's happening in the art world. I think you're incredibly insightful and such a powerful artist in your own right. So thank you for giving us this time. It means a lot for me and the listeners.
Thank you so much. I felt like this was like a therapy session. I love talking about this too because it's so obvious. There's a lot of other artists that feel this. And I really believe that once you start like asking the right questions, as you have, you'll start getting these responses because maybe at first they're scared and they don't want to sound, I don't even know the word, but it's hard to get this reaction out of artists unless they're bitter. If they're bitter because they've been unhappy about their trajectory, then that's a different thing. If you can find a happy artist that can tell you the truth as it is, then you'll get the best responses. And it's the truth. I believe it's the truth.
Well, thank you for that advice. And I look forward to continuing our relationship. And who knows, maybe we'll have you on again where you can talk more about the work that's going to be exhibited at Duckworth.
That'd be incredible. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.